Hello and welcome, everyone. I am Angelica Olea, the Senior Vice President of Operations at Assisted Living Locators, and you are watching All About Alzheimer's Livestream, a series created to support families, caregivers, and healthcare professionals with insight and advice on dementia and Alzheimer's care. Today, our episode is Navigating Assisted Living Choices for Your Loved One with Alzheimer's and Dementia. Our experts are here to explore the options, considerations, and questions you should have when choosing an assisted living. And bonus, at the end, we will provide access to a free guide featuring the top 50 questions you should ask when touring any kind of senior living community. We encourage viewers, please submit your questions. Just know we are notating and taking note of those. They are being monitored on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So please be sure to submit any questions that you have for our guests today. And I'd like to introduce them. And if you could briefly share a little bit about yourself. Our first guest today is Mary Curtis Pisano. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon, Angelica, and thank you so much for having me. My name is Mary Curtis Pisano. I am a Dementia Care Certified Senior Care Advisor. Navigating the complex world of senior care can be extremely overwhelming, especially when families are dealing with dementia and Alzheimer's. My goal as a senior care advisor is to be a resource for my clients and empowering them to be able to make the right choice that's best for them.
Awesome. And Mary Curtis, can you tell us where you're located?
Yeah, absolutely. I am in the Assisted Living Locators of Tampa.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks.
And our second guest is Jay Miner. Jay, please introduce yourself.
Hey, how are you doing? It's good to be here. I'm Jay Miner. I live in Orange County, California, so I'm on the other side of the country. I am a certified senior advisor, and I'm also dementia care certified. Really grateful to be discussing this topic today. You know, several years ago, my brothers and I had to find some memory care options for my dad who had Alzheimer's. And I just remember at the time just feeling kind of lost, like, okay, where do I start? How do I know what's a good place to go? What questions do I ask? So it's great to be able to provide some of these resources to other families who are going through this today. So thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Jay. And I know a lot of our audience that is joining us today is in a similar situation. And that's the point of these live streams, is to really help families out there and with loved ones that have Alzheimer's and dementia know how to better support and care for their loved one. Yeah. So thank you for joining us. I appreciate you sharing that. So let's jump right in. Our first topic that we will be covering today is going to be understanding assisted living versus memory care. So for our listeners who might not know yet, are you able to give us a brief overview? And I'm going to ask Mary Curtis to jump in here. What is the difference? What is assisted living? Can you tell us about it?
Absolutely, Angelica. So assisted living facilities, or I will abbreviate them ALF, which is standard in the industry. If an ALF has a standard license, they are required to provide housing, meals, and assistance with activities of daily living. And the activities of daily living can be anything, bathing, dressing, eating, toileting, ambulation, personal hygiene. The ALS will focus on getting a personal care plan that meets the unique needs of each individual resident while also promoting their independence. And one important aspect of an assisted living facility is a socialization. And that's so important because it helps people remain independent and be active and getting the socialization that they need. And some good examples of these social activities that an ALF may offer, games, exercise classes, arts and crafts. Many of them have outings, such as going to restaurants or going out shopping. They also will have special birthday and seasonal celebrations as part of their social activities. It's important to understand that the regular ALFs have limited medical support. While they are able to do basic nursing tasks like taking vital signs and administering medication, They are not able to go into higher skilled nursing care. There are specialty licenses that can give the ALFs the ability to provide these enhanced medical support services. So it's important to understand what your state licensing has for the ALFs and the ones that you're looking at to understand what they are allowed to do.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Jay, can you give us a better understanding as what is memory care?
Sure. So a memory care facility is a specialized type of assisted living facility like Mary Curtis was just describing. And a memory care facility is designed for those with Alzheimer's or other dementias. They're focused on enhancing quality of life, minimizing confusion and agitation with their residents. The caregivers in a memory care facility, they receive specialized training in dementia care, including techniques to manage challenging behaviors, to be able to communicate effectively, and really address the unique needs of the residents with those cognitive impairments. Memory care facilities are designed with safety in mind. They often feature secured entries and exits to prevent wandering, as well as they put a lot of thought into the layouts of them that will help to minimize the confusion for the residents, like circular hallways or some clearly marked spaces like that.
Wonderful. Thank you both for sharing some of the differences between assisted living and memory care. And I want to encourage viewers, if you're joining us today, please, if you have any questions, submit them and we will cover those at the end. You can post your questions on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and we'll cover those at the end of the live stream. So diving into our next topic is assessing the needs for Alzheimer's and dementia care. So, Mary Curtis, how do families or loved ones that are looking at placing their loved one with Alzheimer's or dementia evaluate the cognitive and physical needs? So, what are some things that they need to pay attention to or look out for when evaluating their loved one?
Yeah, absolutely. The best way to assess your loved one's current needs are by observing their daily activities, consulting with healthcare professionals, and also having open conversations with the family member. There are three main areas that you should observe. The first is to take a look at their mobility. How easily can they get in and out of the bed or in and out of a chair? Do they need assistance with that, or can they do it independently? Also notice balance issues when they're navigating their surroundings. Do they seem unsteady or can they get around pretty well without any problem? Also, do they need to have an assistive device to help them get around, such as a cane, a walker, or a wheelchair? Next, you need to address their cognitive function. Now, everyone experiences dementia their own way, but here are a few common symptoms that may indicate a decrease in cognitive ability that you should consider. Does your loved one have difficulty recalling recent events? Or do they start repeating themselves in conversations, like asking the same questions over and over? Also, observe them if they have difficulty following the steps in a simple routine, like brushing their teeth. Do they forget to put the toothpaste on the toothbrush before they brush their teeth? That might be a sign of declining cognitive ability. Do they have difficulty finding the right word when they're talking, or do they misinterpret things that they hear? Perhaps they get confused about time or place, losing track of the time, the date, or even the season. You may notice them getting lost in a familiar place. For example, if they still drive and they're used to going out into their little neighborhood, maybe they get lost on the way home, which is very unusual for them because it is a familiar place. And they also may demonstrate visual difficulties, such as misjudging distances, like if they're walking up and down the stairs, or misinterpreting patterns or reflections in the mirror. Lastly, observe how well they are taking care of themselves on a daily basis, such as showering and dressing. Do they forget to take a shower? Or if you suggest it, do they resist taking a shower or getting dressed? Are they able to perform their personal care tasks without forgetting a step? When you visit them, if you haven't seen them in a while, watch for signs of poor hygiene or mismatched clothing. See if they're brushing their teeth and washing correctly, or does it appear that they haven't been? And one thing that I really encourage my families to do is to keep a journal and document any concerning behaviors and consult with the healthcare professionals who specialize in cognitive function, who can also help identify and address these concerns.
I think that's such a fantastic, suggestion for families that may not always be able to be there all the time. Keeping that journal so it's really top of mind, and you remember, looking back, okay, I was there 2 weeks ago. This is what was happening. I'm here today, and just being able to really see if there's some sort of pattern. Thank you, Mary Curtis.
Exactly. You're welcome.
Jay, how do these stages, of the loved one's Alzheimer's impact the choice between going to assisted living or memory care? What are things that we should consider? What stage of the loved one's disease are they in? Can you describe some of that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, dementia and Alzheimer's are progressive diseases, and so the level of care is going to change over time, and that's something to be aware of for the family, just to know that that's going to be coming. But for instance, in early stage Alzheimer's, there could just be some reminders that are needed. There's minimal assistance needed with daily tasks, so an assisted living facility, like Mary Curtis was talking about earlier, can be really suitable for somebody in early stage Alzheimer's, as long as you're in great communication with the staff there and are making sure that your loved one is safe. When it progresses to kind of middle stage Alzheimer's, there's going to be an increased support level that is needed, more supervision that's needed, more assistance with those activities of daily living. There could be more cognitive changes that start to happen. And so a memory care facility could become a more appropriate choice as those needs start to increase. They've got the specialized staff that are trained to be able to help in that way. And then when you progress into the late stage of dementia or Alzheimer's, that's where you're going to need around the clock support there for your loved one, including helping with eating, help with mobility, with incontinence management, with all of those kind of things. And so you're definitely going to want to be in a memory care situation at that point due to the comprehensive specialized care that is needed. It's also good to consider that the cost of the care will increase as you go through those different progressions. So that's something else for the families to be aware of.
Thank you so much, Jay. So tying it into all of that, our next topic is key considerations when choosing an assisted living facility. So to elaborate more on this, what are some key factors that family members should consider when looking at an assisted living community or a memory care? And just for those that are joining us today and viewing later, we will be giving away a free downloadable top 50 questions when touring. So please keep an eye out for that as we'll share it at the end. And Mary Curtis, so can you tell us a little bit about, some key factors? What should family members consider when choosing an assisted living?
Yeah, absolutely. I always start with the location of the property. It's important to understand what are some of the activities that your loved one enjoys doing in the community. Do they attend a church? So is it important to find a community that is within a distance to the church where they can continue to be engaged at that location? Also, the location of family and friends that may visit, or they may be able to pick the loved one up and bring them to be involved in certain family or friend celebrations.
What about amenities? Are you
Go.
able to tell us about some of the amenities and what communities offer?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you go to visit these locations, the communities, you want to be observant of, the facilities themselves and the property. How well is it maintained, inside and outside? Is it clean and attractive? And it's important also to look at how easily the hallways you're able to navigate them. So if someone is in a wheelchair, is it easy for them to move about the building without running into, obstacles in the way? And some of the amenities that are maybe important to your loved one, it's important to understand those as well. What's a must have, or what's a would like to have as far as the amenities. And they may include physical therapy, having a provider on site, a fitness center, even a movie theater, a swimming pool, a barber or a salon, so they can get their hair done without having to leave the community. and ask what amenities are included and and what may have an extra charge.
I love that. And you brought up a couple of things here that I want to touch on is what is the loved one that's actually moving in? What is important to them? You brought that up. And that's a great point that it's something we need to be sure we're talking about with the actual resident that will be moving in. What is something that is important to them, whether it's location or amenity, something that they really want? I love that you touched on that. And then the other thing is, can you tell us about the other part of it, which is the contracts and the finances and how all that works, and something that families should know?
Yeah, absolutely. So taking the time to understand the contract is really important. And I suggest, sitting down with the sales director or the executive director to really go through the details of it and understand all the parts to it. Um, you need to understand what fees to expect, what of these amenities are included, and what services are included or maybe not included that you thought they might be. Also, many communities may have an annual increase. And so it's important to understand at what point that could be assessed and about how much to expect when that time comes around for your loved one.
That's a great point that you made right there, is really looking at that finances and what do we need to plan for. What about the staff and resident interaction, and something that they should also think about, how many people are there? Is that something you tell families to look at?
Right. I suggest when people are touring, get to know the staff that's there, meet the executive director, have conversations, ask questions. And it's the quality of the staff is a good indicator of a community that's dedicated to the care and safety of their residents. Observe the staff while you're touring, the nurses or the staff who are working with the residents, or even the sales director as you're walking around. Do they address the other residents by name? They have personal conversations with them. Those are just some important things to keep your eye out for as you're walking around the community. And another important thing to ask is the turnover ratio for the staff. That's a good indicator of stability and consistency of care. The longer someone is there working with your family member, that consistency is really important. So if there's a high turnover ratio, there may be some underlying concerns you should ask for.
Thank you, Mary Curtis. So let's jump over to Jay for a little bit more on this. Jay, can you elaborate on this and talk more about the personal care homes, boarding care homes versus large properties? Can you dive into that for us?
Sure. Yeah. So a lot of the things that we've been talking about so far are these larger assisted living facilities or memory care facilities, and they can have anywhere from 50 to 100 to 200 or 300 residents in them. So those are some of the stereotypes you'll see when you're driving around town. However, there are also a lot of private care homes. These are private residences that have been outfitted to take care of, a smaller number of residents. So like out here in California, we call them boarding care homes. That's kind of the term that we use for them. They're licensed for up to 6 residents at a time. And I actually brought some pictures of some of those because I wanted to kind of show people what they can look like. And so if we could throw those up on the screen, there can be a wide variety of what some of these homes can look like. So this is the inside of one of them. This is their lounge. And they actually have different recliners brought in for the number of residents that they have. So if they've got more residents in at a time, they'll have more recliners. This is the kitchen where they will prepare all the food, and everything there is taken care of. They've got different bedrooms. So they have private bedrooms or they have shared bedrooms. Where people can share those, and so you can bring in a hospital bed if needed to those. You can decorate these rooms any way that you want, bring in a lot of personal touches for the resident, pictures up on the wall, furniture that helps them to remember what it looks like. And then there's the bathrooms that, where they can give individualized care. Like in this picture, I love this. They've got this great contraption to help move them from the toilet right into the shower. And so there's some really great, ways that they can really assist the residents. So this one looks like more of a basic home, but I also wanted to show you some pictures. There's some other homes that put a lot of attention on then kind of how things look. And so you've got a wide variety of it. Like that first home that I showed you, they have excellent care. Their caregivers are amazing. And then you look at the pictures of this home. Obviously, the landscaping is beautiful. If you look at the inside of it, they've done a lot of work on the inside, so it's beautiful to be able to have a place for your loved one to be. You can see now the kitchen back there. So this home has a lot of light, and so there's a big kind of a spectrum of what these homes can look like. And so now the family members, when they're touring these, they can become like, oh, I really love the way that this looks. And I always remind them, yeah, this is a great home. What I want you to focus on, though, is what kind of care do you feel like that you're going to get? Here's the bathroom in this one, which is beautiful. But what do you sense in your gut about the way that they're going to take care of your loved one? Because what's important is the care that we're going to be able to provide. So there really is a wide spectrum when you are looking at this. And that's why I love being able to help people go look through these choices and try to figure it out so that they don't just, get stuck with the first option that comes up to them. And, we can kind of walk them through that. Something else that's really good to consider and take care of or to ask about is the food. And so whether you're in one of those big communities, when I take clients there, I always want to do a tour when we can have lunch. That way they get to actually test out the food and try it and see if it's good. And look at the menu. What kind of options do they have? Ask questions about it. See what the service is like. In one of the smaller board and care homes, though, they get to be much more individualized with that. I was just on a tour a couple days ago, and the woman who was preparing the food, we stopped and talked to her, and she said, "Oh yeah," she said, "I try to take care of all my residents because Shirley does not like fish, so we're not going to do that." And but then all these others are, they just make sure and take care of everybody really well.
Thank you so much, Jay. Yeah, that's something we really wouldn't even know about it in the residential communities that people live in. I would love to jump to our live Q&A here and get some of these questions answered by our experts. So let's dive right into that. So the first question is going to be for, let's send this to Jay. Leslie from Grand Rapids asks, what happens if my loved one's condition worsens or deteriorates? Will the facility be able to handle end-of-life care for my loved one?
Yeah, no, that's a great question to consider. It's important to ask the facilities to see if they are comfortable with providing that care until the end of life. And so that's when they will be coordinating with some hospice agencies. And so many of these facilities work really well with hospice agencies and companies and coordinate with them to provide that care that is needed. And so a great question to ask when you're at the memory care facility is, what hospice companies do you prefer to work with and why? And then that will give you the insight into that facility's philosophy about hospice. And then as you listen to their answer, kind of trust your gut on how, what they're saying and see how you feel about that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jay. All right. Mary Curtis. Eleanor from Boston asks, how can I make sure the staff knows how to handle my loved one with Alzheimer's when they show signs of anxiety or exhibit negative behaviors? Mary Curtis, are you able to hear us? All right. I'll shoot over to Jay for this one.
Sure.
Jay, so
Yeah.
how can the staff handle this if they get anxiety or show negative behaviors?
No, well, and this is a very normal thing. And so that's the thing to remember, is that as a family member, this can feel so alarming and confusing and overwhelming. But these facilities are very trained on how to deal with it. And so you can always put your trust that it's not as overwhelming and alarming for those people, for the caregivers. So before move-in, I think the community should have a really detailed conversation with the family and the caregivers to come up with some strategies to redirect any of those challenging behaviors. For example, something they could do is they should have an understanding of things that the resident loves to do, like what are their favorite foods, what music do they like to listen to, what TV shows do they like to watch, what's important to them. And a lot of these facilities will try to get that information before they actually move in, before the resident moves in, so they can welcome them in a really great way and have the food they like right away, and make sure they can watch those TV shows. I went to a place last night, and they were all sitting there watching Yellowstone because that was the new resident loved Yellowstone, so they were all into that.
I love that. And I think something that you and Mary Curtis mentioned previously was that look at how is the staff trained? Are they
Yeah.
trained in dementia care? Do they know how to handle these behaviors? And that is something that you should work with either your local senior living advisor, or when you're working with the community directly, you need to ask these types of questions and be sure to put that game plan in place. I love that. So a
Right.
follow-up question for that. So does that include if the loved one is aggressive? So how will a memory care handle those aggressions? Will they
Yeah.
accept?
Well, they many of them will, but this is where you need to have conversations with them ahead of time and be very clear about what the aggressive behavior is, and because the caregivers are specially trained to manage those type of behaviors because they're not uncommon. But you just want to be sure that the communication is really clear and everybody understands things ahead of time.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I apologize. Mary Curtis had to drop off. She was having some technical difficulty. So, Jay, you and I will run through the rest of it together. So,
Great.
uh, a question from Michael. Hi, Michael. He said, how much activity should I expect the facility to provide my loved one? I don't want them just to be plopped down in front of the TV.
Yeah. This happens actually quite a bit if I'll take somebody on a tour and we get there where everyone is having TV time. And that can be very kind of alarming for the family member. Like, is this all that they're going to do? I think that you remember the goal is not constant activity, but it's activity that meets the needs of the residents. So just communicate really well, find out what the activities are, and then that will help put you at ease.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. So that is our time for today. There's been so much valuable information that has been shared on this live stream, covering everything from understanding assisted living versus memory care, the needs, assessing the needs of a loved one, and key considerations when choosing a community or a home. So thank you so much for Jay and Mary Curtis for joining us today.
Pleasure.
And their information will be shared here at the end. We'll put that in all of the channels on YouTube, Facebook, and you can also find them at assistedlivinglocators.com. But for those that are viewing this today, we are going to be sharing the top 50 questions to ask when touring senior living communities. So please be sure to click on that link and download here in the comments. And you will also find Mary Curtis's email and Jay's email in the comments section as well. I appreciate you all joining us today. And if you would like to be the first to know about future live stream events, please be sure to register. And if you already received the email for the live stream, then you're registered. But we'll be sure to drop the link in the comments section of all of our platforms. And this will also be available for playback on our website, assistedlivinglocators.com, or on any of our accounts, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. Thank you so much for our attendees, Jay Miner out in Orange County and Mary Curtis from Tampa for joining us today. And thank you all for watching. Hope you all have a great day. Thanks for joining our live stream.